I wanted to make a brief clip about the differences I see, the major differences when watching some type of action movie, and how things would really portray in real life, or things that you would see slightly different. And there's probably a phone book list long of things that people will be able to comment on and differences, but I just wanted to mention at least a few. Maybe this is part one of a series of videos that may get posted and or responded to about the differences between what you see in fictional Hollywood and what you see in real life. But I just wanted to point it out so that there's no misunderstanding from someone who thinks that what they're watching on television is the same thing as what would happen in real life, or what perhaps should happen in real life. But my opinion only. That's the beauty of the internet. So the first thing that I wanted to mention here is I have a single action 1911 in front of me, and a lot of times in the movies, for effect, when somebody means business, so to speak, they'll take their pistol out and they're pointing it at somebody, or that it's a hot incident, and when the level of seriousness arises, everybody takes their shotgun or their pistol, and you hear a racking, right? You hear that you hear that type of noise added to the movies. Now, my question is, why, if you're in a situation, are you racking it, right? Because the whole purpose of racking a firearm is to chamber around. If you're going into a situation, you already want to be ready to go for it. You don't want to have an empty chamber for something to escalate very quickly and then have to be fumbling around, taking the time to put a round in the chamber. So I think a lot of the time in Hollywood, as they ramp up, they just make it convenient. Like, the firearm's already loaded in most cases when they just want to shoot it. But if it's a movie where it's more of a discussion and it's rising towards the climax, they'll mean business and they'll rack it again or something. Now, why you don't see rounds flying out that should have already been in the chamber that are completely and haven't even been used, who knows, right? But I suppose that's part of the Hollywood myth. The second thing is on a single action pistol, and you can see my videos on the difference between a double action and a single action. But if the hammer is already down on a single action pistol, there's no way it's going to fire, right? So no matter how hard I squeeze this trigger, the round is not going to discharge, and the firearm is not going to cycle. So when I see movies where they're utilizing like a 1911 or a 45, a lot of times, like they do quite a few movies, that all of a sudden it's not going to go bang, it's not going to discharge because the hammer is in the down position. And so it's one of the small things that you may or may not notice, but somehow in Hollywood it's down and they squeeze the trigger and it still goes bang. So who knows about that? Also, during reloads or when the magazine is spent, almost all pistols that have a slide that are semi-automatic will lock in the open position when they reload, etc. So if you ever see a pistol that looks like this, and the barrel and the guide rod or what have you is exposed, and the slide is back protruding over the rear grip, it's not going to fire. And in fact, it's pretty much useless because there's nothing in the chamber, and this is the indication that one of the indications that the firearm is empty. So taking a firearm in this position and pointing it, at a threat means absolutely nothing, because it is inert, because there's no ammunition or anything potentially that could do anything. You could have a full magazine in there or something like that, and simply putting a slide home would then make it very quickly go from a non-threat to a serious threat. But the point is, right, this isn't going to do anything. It's not going to discharge. It's not going to go bang. You shouldn't necessarily see this as a as a threat, I guess, as a villain. So not a whole lot of sense being made there. And one of the things that you'll notice is most pistols carry between 7, 8, maybe 15 rounds with some of your high capacity stuff. So if you hear somebody firing, and they fire and they go to this position and you don't see them reload, and all of a sudden they're firing again, there's no way they could have done that. They would have had to reload in order to get additional shots off. And simply just taking a second to reload wouldn't take a whole lot of film or editing time, but I think it's one of those finer points that they miss when shooting a lot of stuff. So instead, the good guy shoots like 700 rounds before they reload, and they only reload once, right? So that's some of the smaller things that I noticed. And one of the last items is the recoil. Our studious, teacher, Sir Isaac Newton, said that, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So you can see all the videos of people firing real arms and how much recoil there is. And the target itself would only at most absorb that same amount of recoil that you see the individual firing it. So if it's if it's a little pop, then literally when that round strikes you, that's all of the recognition that you would get. You're not going to go flying backwards head over heels with like a 44 or 45 or a 357 or any of that stuff, where you just see people like somersaulting backwards and flipping out simply by getting shot, because you're only absorbing as much energy as the person that's firing it. So something to keep in mind. I mean, certainly with more recoil, it's going to be a harder impact, but not hardly anything that's going to pick somebody up off the ground. 180-pound guy is going to pick them up and move them across 5 feet and then slam them down on their back or anything. So one of the last things I wanted to mention about this is, and then this is also related to single action, I should have mentioned it earlier, is when the hammer is in a down position and they're out of ammunition, you won't hear that click sound like you do, indicating that you're out of ammunition. You don't hear that click, 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 because that hammer's not coming down and slamming on an empty trigger like it would on a double action. In a single action, you're never going to hear that empty sound unless you pull the hammer back and you hear it slam forward each time. That's probably the last difference that I want to touch upon. And I know there's hundreds of them, and I'm not, once again, trying to take away from anything, and I'm sure people have hundreds of other differences out there, but these are the main couple that I always notice when I watch movies. So, just FYI, be aware of what's going on, and maybe that's something that you may or may not look for. Hopefully I haven't ruined any of your action movies for you now that you know some of the things I look at or notice when I watch action movies, but nonetheless, be curious to hear what other people think. So, thanks.